Hello, my name's Elijah Wells, and today's review is Scott Cooper's new movie, Springsteen, Delivered Me From Nowhere. The movie follows the legendary rock artist Bruce Springsteen as he navigates fame, his declining mental health, his difficult relationship he had with his alcoholic father, his dating life, and as well as recording two of his most legendary albums, Nebraska and Born in the USA. Even though music biopics are definitely more of a thing now than they were let's say 10 years ago, thanks to something like the Bryan Singer 2018 movie, Bohemian Rhapsody, which had grossed nearly $1 billion in the box office and won a slew of awards, including for Oscars, including for Rami Malek's acting as Freddie Mercury. So of course there was this slew of famous artists that got their own biopics, like Elton John, Aretha Franklin, Robbie Williams, famously as a monkey, and as well as Bob Dylan. And of course there's movies that are being announced, all being filming at the moment, like Madonna, Michael Jackson, and even Britney Spears are getting their own musical biopic. Of course, one of the most legendary rock artists being Bruce Springsteen, and of course his seminal albums being Nebraska and Born in USA, and as well as his very open struggles with depression and his own mental health. It seemed to be somewhat of a good material to adapt into the big screen. The movie boasted some incredible performances, particularly of Jamie Allen White, who's been huge at the moment, not just with the Bear series on Disney Plus, but as well as the upcoming Mandalorian film, and of course the Social Network sequel, which is coming out, which I'm pretty excited for. But in this movie, he plays a titular musician, being Bruce Springsteen. Particularly, he's on the cusp of stardom. He's been selling out arenas, he's been selling out stadiums just all across America, and he's now in a creative crossroads, as in continue what he's doing or radically reinvent himself. So he radically reinvents himself, particularly when he recorded the Nebraska album, given how raw and really very open he was about his mental health, and how that pretty much writes itself large in this album. And so much so it definitely spooked John Landau, who's played by Jeremy Strong, who is absolutely big in Succession and recently got an Oscar nomination for The Apprentice. Again, the movie does shine a light not just on the relationship between him and his manager, being John Landau, but of course his alcoholic father, and the relationship that Bruce has with Faye, which doesn't go all that well in the long run, but however, the movie does depict Bruce Springsteen as pretty much whose mentality begins to crush down more and more throughout the movie, given the weight of all these spider webs of relationships he was going through, as well as how mentally tormented he was, particularly when he's recording two albums, being Nebraska and, of course, Born in USA. What I find distinctively cool about this movie is how it treats the film's flashbacks, which largely talks about Bruce's very turbulent relationship he had with his father, who was an alcoholic, and usually gets violently confrontational around his mum and around him as well. And it's all done in black and white. Again, I'm not sure when the cutoff was, when to do it on black and white, then transition it to color. But again, the color stuff is pretty much the majority of the film, where it's pretty much him in the present day, which is again the early mid-80s. Again, which is again something I find really cool. Particularly, a lot of music biopics do depict the character pretty much going about his life, pretty much in one lineage timeline. Well, for this one, it's pretty much separated in two different styles. As in, the movie is in the present day, where present day being mid-80s. Is pretty much in color, while his backstory is pretty much done in black and white. I'm not sure what the creative decision was behind this and what was the logic behind it, but I thought this was a pretty cool decision to take off with. If I had a problem with this movie, is that the movie's pacing seems to really drag on in some instances or some scenes in the movie. I think it just really boiled down to the fact that the movie's pacing wise was just repetitive, or the way the story kind of sets itself out is getting pretty repetitive, as it's usually him in the studio, him at home, or him at a diner, or him just walking around New Jersey. Again, I feel like it just kind of repeats itself a little bit when it comes to narrative, or repeats its setting to a point. It kind of just gets too repetitive to a point. It kind of just wears on to the film's pacing a little too drastically, to the point it kind of just feels like it just kind of bogs on for a little too long. Of course, another prominent supporting character in this movie is Faye, who's Bruce's love interest in this movie. If I pronounce his name incorrectly, I do apologize. She's portrayed by Odessa Young. Again, she is pretty great in this movie, even though she does pop up in the movie somewhat periodically, not as much as I kind of want to, but again, she does have a lot of Bruce's back throughout the movie until things somewhat definitely fall apart between the two, particularly with Bruce's mental state when he was recording these two albums. And of course, Faye working like I'm guessing a minimum wage job in a diner. Again, pretty much showing that just like Bruce, she is somewhat vulnerable as well in a mental capacity way, but in a somewhat different direction from Bruce, as in they're both their lives are somewhat falling apart, but the way it's falling apart is different from her boyfriend being one of the biggest rock stars at the moment. And particularly with the acting as well, where Bruce is depicted in this movie as somewhat really energetic on stage, but completely down to earth and downright burnt out off stage as well. And the music as well is again incredibly good as well, because that's why I brought the vinyl. Again, one of my favourite songs that I've got featured on the album is not just Born in the USA and We Were Born to Run, and of course I'm on Fire, which is also did feature in one scene in the film, which is again a really nice touch as well. And of course featured a couple other songs, most notably from his Nebraska album, as he's not just him recording these songs in his bedroom with a minimal production setup and just him and the guitar throughout production, and him trying to work from those demos and trying to have the quality to be much better for more conventional cassette recordings that were coming back in the 80s. Again, it pretty much follows that journey as well, but again, how he depicts him as a musician, less of as a burnt out figure, is also again incredibly well of Jimmy Allen White. Even if the movie had some notable issues like the pacing and how repetitive the scene structure was, but I feel like the movie does a really good job in honouring the legacy of one of the greatest rock stars to ever grace not just the American music scene, but the entire global music scene as a whole. The acting, in particular of Jeremy Allen White and Jeremy Strong in this movie, is absolutely incredible in this movie. The usage of Bruce's music from both of his Born in USA album as well as his Nebraska stuff is also incredibly well. I definitely like the idea of him being depicted as somewhat as a miserable and definitely burnt out musician who's definitely haunted by his demons, not just of his father being an alcoholic, but also in the sense that he's pretty much now becoming more and more distant from everyone around him, which is also something I really did like. But even if the pacing did pretty much took something out of me from enjoying this movie, but I feel like I enjoyed the movie from what it is, despite some of the more glaring issues I had. So, without further ado, I'm thinking Springsteen Delivered Me From Nowhere is a 7 out of 10 for me. So, what do you think of Springsteen Deliver Me From Nowhere? Let me know in the comments down below. Like this video, subscribe to my channel, and also follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Letterboxd. And this is Elijah Wells, and bye.